Hi, welcome to episode 10 of season 3. My name is Daniel Fernandes. I'm so glad you could make it. I usually wrap up every season after 10 episodes, so this could be the season finale or not. It's totally up to you. So let me know what I should do. Should I continue doing more episodes or should I stop? Before I proceed, I want to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like and share this episode on your social media. And if you want to pay for the podcast, there are links on the description below. It's pay as you like. Go check it out. All right, so it's Mother's Day today. So I want to wish my mom and all the other mommies out there a very happy Mother's Day. I don't think you guys get enough appreciation for everything that you do. So I just want to let you know that I love you, that I love my mom. Okay, I mean, not your mom because that would be weird. But if you haven't done this already, pause this video, call your mom and wish her a happy Mother's Day. But come back and finish watching this, okay? Don't go all, Mommy, I don't know how to wash the dishes. How do I wash the dishes, Mommy? No, don't do that, guys. Don't embarrass yourselves. Okay, so after last week's episode, there was a comment from someone who said, I like you as a comedian, even though I don't agree with everything you say, which is great. You know, I respect that. But then somebody responded to that comment and asked her what she didn't like. And then someone else replied on her behalf and said, he's too biased. Why didn't he talk about such and such thing? And that guy replied, but he did talk about that thing in another episode. And then this person shouts back with, is he paying you to fight on his behalf? It's like, how bad is the lockdown affecting you if you think people are getting paid to fight for me in YouTube comments? By the way, buddy, I've sent you your check via carrier pigeon. You should receive it in a couple of weeks. Yeah, let me know. Anyways, so this conversation escalated and I had to ask them to stop because it was hurting my feelings. And then the person who wrote the original comment deleted it. So let me say a couple of things, because the whole scene, whether it's podcasts or stand-up comedy in India is very new, you know. So every now and then we need to keep letting audiences know what this is all about so they can manage their expectations accordingly, right? So to begin with, don't take this podcast seriously, okay? This is just for entertainment. Like I often get people saying, why are you talking about oranges so much? Talk about apples now if you have the guts. And then somebody else will go, what about grapes? Why don't you say anything about grapes? Huh? And then someone else will go, oh, remember what happened to chikkus in 1984? Talk about that, nah. The thing is, I don't have to talk about everything, okay? That's the beauty of having your own podcast. You can literally choose what you want to talk about, you know? And just because I speak about a certain topic, I don't have to cover all points of view around that topic. You know, this isn't a documentary. Like a podcast is, in fact, just one person's opinion on something, you know? You may or may not agree with what I say, but nothing happens beyond that, okay? Like you're never going to wake up the next morning with a boil on your bum just because you didn't agree with something I said on my podcast, you know? There is no physical consequence to this. So chill out, okay? Like another thing I hear, and this person mentioned it as well, oh, you're too biased. Well, yeah, I am. And so are you, and so is everyone else, okay? Your biases make you the person you are. Like I'm biased towards a certain way of life, which is why people like hanging out with me, you know? Like if there were no biases at all, a lot of us would be in jail right now. You know, we'd be locked up in one place, not allowed to go outside or do anything we like. That sounds awfully familiar. Sorry, I didn't mean to stir things up there. But the thing is, the point I'm trying to make is that as a comedian, I'm not supposed to be neutral, okay? You're confusing me for a journalist. A journalist is supposed to set his biases aside and report facts. As a comedian, I'm supposed to make fun of those facts through my opinions, you know? And I know this could sound very confusing to a lot of you because India isn't exactly the gold standard of journalism, but that's just how it is, you know? So yeah, I'm just a guy on his couch saying shit, you know, and if you ever feel that something that's important to you is not being spoken about, here's what you can do about it. Start your own podcast. Yeah. All right. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Speaking of getting things out of the way, I've started shaving regularly now with a razor. And my favorite part of that whole experience is splashing on aftershave. That sweet burn, when you do it, feels so good. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, but every man in this country, whenever he splashes aftershave on him, he experiences this. Okay, let's look at some comments. Okay, this one is from Amara Nasir. She says, can you please talk about boys' locker room chat in the next video? A lot of people messaged in asking me to talk about this, and I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said before. Okay. And I don't want to indulge in virtue signaling of any sort. I'm not your moral science teacher. Okay. What I can do at best is offer some commentary on this particular issue. So what happened was, a bunch of 17-year-old boys were outed for talking about girls on a private group chat in the same way a lot of men talk about women in public on social media. They were passing comments about their bodies in private in the same way men pass comments about women's bodies in public on social media. They were talking about raping these girls in private in the same way some men talk about raping women in public on social media. So to sum this up, a lot of people were astonished that these boys were doing in private what a lot of men have been doing in public for a very long time, And I guess the sentiment was, ऐसे कैसे private kopchi में, सबके सामने करो ना. See, everything that is making people angry about boys' locker room has been playing out with Safura Zargar over the last few days. Like, here's some homework for you. Google her name, read up about what's been happening, and direct some outrage there. Okay. Then the next day, after the boys' locker room incident happened, hashtag girls' locker room was trending on Twitter because somebody uploaded screenshots of girls saying very derogatory things about boys, and in both cases, very, very, very bad behavior, and for anyone who says that gender equality is a myth, you are totally wrong. Hashtag girls locker room proves that having a vagina does not make you a nice person, and being an asshole is gender neutral, But the big question right now is whose fault is this? The nation wants to know. And the answer is, it's nobody's fault. That's the truth, guys. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault that for decades Indian families have relegated women to childbearing sex objects whose place is in the kitchen. It's nobody's fault that boys are often raised in unequal gender environments, because of which they don't know how to treat women when they become men. It's nobody's fault that we keep telling our girls to cover up, but we don't tell our boys not to stare, touch, or molest. It's nobody's fault that nobody talks to kids about sex when they're in their teens, and then they have to figure stuff out on their own, and often in a very crude and negative manner. It's nobody's fault that casual sexism and misogyny is laughed at by everyone in WhatsApp groups. It's nobody's fault that Bollywood for decades has equated harassment to romance and treated women like pieces of meat, whether it's in storylines or in their songs. It's nobody's fault, that we elect leaders that often denigrate women, leaders who follow men on social media, who routinely threaten women with rape and other acts of violence. It's nobody's fault that when we see our friends mistreating their partners, we look the other way, So we will never know how we got here, because it's nobody's fault. It's all one big mystery. But if you sat these boys and girls down and ask them if they knew that what they were doing was wrong, most of them will say yes. In fact, I guess all of them. I don't think anybody's going to go, oh, I didn't know it was not okay to say iske mamme bade mast hai, mujhe daba ke lassi peeni hai. They knew it was wrong, but they chose to do it anyway. And that's what it comes down to, like knowledge and choice. But like I said, I am not your moral science teacher. You know the line that separates right from wrong. Choose accordingly. All right, let's take another comment. This one's from Shubhi Singh. How to build up a conversation? For some people, it's so natural. For me, it feels unnatural and uncomfortable with the people I've just met. It's really screwing up with my professional and personal relationship as well, because it's so much of noise in my head. Organization of these thoughts is such a task, and the more I try, the more I become conscious of this and screw everything over and over again. That's a good question. Public speaking of any sort can be quite daunting, whether it's a large crowd or it's a group of people, your family or your friends or your co-workers. It's very easy to get tongue-tied. Like I remember when I was in my early 20s, in my first job, we would have team briefings, and at the end of every briefing, they would ask someone to repeat the briefing just to make sure everybody got it. And I would keep praying that they wouldn't pick me, because I would literally fumble every time I had to speak in front of a crowd, and my thoughts would be very incoherent, and I just wanted to jump out of the window. So yeah, I get it. It's not the easiest thing to do. But fun fact, okay, public speaking is the number one fear in the world. Number 2 is the fear of death. But the good news is that if fear number 2 comes true, then you don't have to worry about fear number 1. And I will never forget my worst public speaking experience. Okay, I was in school and I must have been around like 9 years old, and I was selected to represent my class in an elocution competition. Okay, I don't know, maybe the teacher saw something in me and she said, okay, I think you can do this. And so I rehearsed with my teacher for what may have been like a couple of weeks every day, after school, and I thought I was ready. I had it all locked in. I was ready to go, and then I get on stage and I see what must have been around 300 students just sitting there and staring back at me, and my mind just went blank. Dude, I forgot everything I had rehearsed, and there was nothing but silence, And also, a lot of Catholic schools in the country have a church and cemetery inside the school compound, which is so bizarre. Like, it's so bizarre that nobody thought it was weird that there are graves inside the school and that our children are running around dead bodies, And in a lot of schools, you also have a science lab, and every science lab thing has this like skeleton inside a glass case, and for most kids, that was their first experience of seeing a human skeleton. But not me. No. My first experience of seeing a human skeleton was when Mr. Pereira was exhumed to make room for Mrs. DeCosta. So, this performance was happening right next to the cemetery. Okay, so it's me on stage, it's the students, and then dead people. Okay, and you couldn't tell the difference. And I remember just being stuck on stage for what seemed like about like a minute, and then I just got off and I was like, okay, I am never doing something like this ever again. But when I did get off, a lot of the students actually clapped. I don't know what, maybe they were thinking, wow, what a performance. Yeah, he said so much by saying nothing at all. It's very open to interpretation. But when that happened, I decided, it was so terrifying, dude. I was like, I am never doing something like this ever again. I'm never getting in front of a crowd again and speaking. Okay, although I have been on stage since I was 6 years old, but I was doing other things, like singing and dancing and plays. I was in a band, so it was always with a group of other people. So I always had that protection that in case I fuck up, they've got my back. But for a very long time, my public speaking skills was zilch, And then 17 years later, during my MBA, I was asked to make a presentation to the junior batch that had just come in. I was supposed to talk to them about snakes on campus. And when I say snakes on campus, I don't mean people who will pretend to be interested in you for those 2 years just so they don't have to face their loneliness and inner demons. I mean actual snakes, for real. So here's the thing. Most of you may not know about me, but I'm an amateur herpetologist, okay? So what that means is I have an avid interest in snakes and other reptiles, mostly snakes. And I've been trained to rescue and relocate snakes whenever they come in contact with humans. So our campus in Pune was nestled in the hills, so there were plenty of snakes around, and this was a legit issue. And I needed to brief the students about this, since I was one of the guys who looked after the rescues on campus. And when I was asked to do this, that school performance came to my mind, and I remember like blanking out then, and I was like, shit, I can't go through that experience again. And I was trying to figure out how I could do this. So what I did was I just wrote down a few points about what I thought the students should know. And then I tried to make it funny, just by sprinkling it with a few jokes. And it worked. People were laughing, hysterically. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on Netflix. The jokes were silly though, okay? One of the things I said was, don't go to the academic block late at night, because besides love bites, you may also come back with a snake bite. And the crowd lost their shit, which in hindsight, I feel was because of the prospect of a hickey. So that for me was the first step towards breaking the mental block about public speaking, and then after that I took part in a bunch of activities that required me to either host or perform on stage, and that eventually led me to doing stand-up for the very first time while I was doing my MBA. So I guess if you're somebody who's struggling with public speaking right now, there is some sort of a mental block, which is super easy to overcome, like linguistic ability is a skill, and the only way to get better at any skill is to keep practicing it, So don't look at public speaking as just getting on stage and talking to 1,000 people, that image in your mind will freak you out and shut you down. Any kind of speaking that's not with yourself at 3 a.m. Counts as public speaking, and that will help build up those skills, So there's a lot that goes into making a good conversationalist, and I can't get into all of it today, but I can give you like a few suggestions to get you started. So number one, practice, of course. Every time you get the opportunity to speak to somebody, speak to them. The more conversations you have, the better you get. Number two, use short sentences. What I've noticed is that people who struggle to have conversations usually tend to speak in much longer sentences because they don't know how to arrive at the point they're trying to make. So they end up rambling or they just sound very incoherent. So to avoid that, use short sentences, get to the point faster, and you will find it easier to speak to people. Number three, use what I call the table tennis concept. When you start a conversation and you say something, wait for the other person to respond and then build on what that person is saying. And then just keep doing this back and forth. And then what happens is it's not just on you to make the conversation interesting. Now 2 people are contributing or 3 people are contributing, and the conversation just gets more and more wholesome. 4, soak up as much information as you can, books, movies, documentaries, music, read up on history and politics. The more information you have, the more interesting you become, and the more you have to talk about, Number 5, smile. It's a very simple trick to do when you're having a conversation. So when you smile, what happens is you make the other person you are speaking to very comfortable, and then that comfort rubs off back on you, and the conversation then becomes smooth. But obviously, context, don't smile during a funeral. That would just be weird. People will think you had something to do with it. Okay. Number 6, develop your opinions on how you see the world. So quite often whenever people are speaking to one another, they're looking for perspective that either might be similar to theirs or different, and something that they can learn from. So it's very important to have opinions, so develop your own opinions, develop these perspectives, so when you have conversations with people, you can bring those opinions forward, and it's not just information that you're spouting. And once you do this regularly, once you get a hang of all these things, then see how you can scale this up. So take up bigger challenges like briefings at work, or toast at somebody's wedding, or a speech. These really help you strengthen those skills. And don't be afraid to write things down, play around with words, and practice again, rehearse. No one, very few people can just fire immediately with a blank slate in mind, and that is something that comes with a lot of practice. So don't put pressure on yourself. Just treat every conversation like a friendly interaction, and eventually you will find that you've become quite good at it. Yeah, let me know how that works for you. And here's the last thing I want to leave you with. Okay, good conversation is not about using big words. Okay, nobody likes people who use big words. Big words are only important when you're playing Scrabble. Good conversation is about creating a connection with the person you're speaking to. That's what people want. They want a connection. A connection is engaging. I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes when you're speaking to somebody and you don't realize how much time has passed, and then suddenly you're looking at your watch and holy shit, it's been an hour. That's because that's a conversation with a connection. But sometimes you're having a conversation with somebody and everything they're saying is just hitting you on the head and falling on the ground, and you're just like, oh God, just stop talking, stop breathing. That's a conversation with no connection, and then you just have to go file for divorce. Anyways, I hope that answered your question, Shubhi, and let me know. Try all this stuff that I suggested and see if it works. Okay. And on that note, I'm going to end this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Again, don't forget to like this episode, share it on your social media, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to pay for the podcast, links in the description below. I will see you next week with a new episode or not. It's up to you. Comment and let me know if you want me to keep doing this. If you're having fun, if you're enjoying it, I'll keep doing more of it. My name is Daniel Fernandes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and have a great week.